This is WICS.
This is NBC Nightly News, reported by Connie Chung.
Good evening. Gary Hart, who has been on the defensive all week, today is on the attack. He challenged Walter Mondale to close down his delegate committees, which have accepted money from special interest political action committees, and demanded Mondale give the money back. Mondale has not yet responded to that, but he knows the issue could be a menace affecting his vote in this Tuesday's important New York primary. NBC News correspondent Lisa Myers has details.
This is Walter Mondale.
After days of cutting up Hart on everything from the Middle East to housing, Mondale tried to regain the offensive as he toured an Italian market in the Bronx. The market was festooned with Mondale signs, some paid for with funds from political action committees, whose money Mondale promised not to accept. Mondale points out that the PAC money, mostly from labor unions, didn't go into his campaign, but to independent committees to elect Mondale delegates. But a Hart ad to air this weekend accuses Mondale of breaking his promise.
Mr. Mondale says he isn't taking PAC money, but the Mondale delegate slates are. That kind of manipulation of money through the back room is politics as usual, and it's wrong.
Today, Mondale accused Hart of being self-righteous.
Now let me say something about Mr. Hart, who's trying to be sanctimonious about this. When he ran for the Senate, he accepted well over $150,000 in PAC money. So it's a question of how we reform this system. That's what this issue comes down to.
Mondale has asked that the delegate committee stop taking PAC money, but not other contributions. And he says he does not object to the existence of the delegate committees themselves, even though they were set up to circumvent federal campaign spending limits. New York Governor Mario Cuomo, who's running Mondale's campaign here, admits that the committees are a device for funneling extra cash into the Mondale effort.
We won't have as much as Hart, and we tried to find every way we could to assist ourselves.
Cuomo has said all along that money is Mondale's biggest problem here, and because of this issue, it may turn out to be more of a problem than he thought. But for now, Mondale's advisors say there is no problem big enough not to predict victory. Lisa Myers, NBC News, with the Mondale campaign in New York.
Gary Hart has his own reasons for thinking he will do well Tuesday, but he also may have his own problems with one special interest group in particular. Bob Kerr has more on the Hart campaign.
Gary Hart's New York polls show that in 2 weeks he has moved up from 18 points behind Walter Mondale to just 5 points behind and gaining.
We're in good shape and very, very healthy and coming on strong.
Yet there is some concern among Hart aides that the gun control issue, a matter of great concern in New York City, could hurt Hart.
Frankly, this issue has never been on the forefront of my areas of concern.
Politically, that's not surprising for a Colorado senator who wears cowboy boots, but for a Democratic presidential candidate who needs votes from crime-weary New Yorkers?
The Congress has yet to see the kind of comprehensive national legislation that will guarantee the legitimate interests of people who are sportsmen, gun collectors, and whomever.
Some aides believe Hart spent too much time on the defensive this week, that Mondale set the agenda.
That when Chrysler needed help, he voted against him because he wanted to do more of it. The fact of it is, Chrysler needed help right then. Some of us stood up and made the difference. Only 8 Democrats voted with big oil, and one of them was Gary Hart. Why do you run those ads that suggest that I'm out trying to kill kids?
The following day, Hart rushed to spend $135,000 for a nationally televised restatement of his ideas. Aides winced when it got off to a slow start.
Good evening.
Today, Frank Mankiewicz joined the campaign as a senior advisor. Mankiewicz ran the 1972 McGovern campaign with Hart and was Robert Kennedy's press secretary in 1968. This afternoon, a crowd of about 4,000 showed up at a Hart rally in Great Neck, a heavily Jewish Long Island community. It was one of Hart's biggest crowds yet. With only 2 days left before the primary, Hart's polling also shows that as much as half of Mondale's support is soft, willing to switch. Bob Kerr, NBC News, with the Hart campaign in New York.
Jesse Jackson, who some pollsters believe is gaining in New York, is working on that so-called soft vote. Kenley Jones is covering the Jackson campaign.
You vote in New York?
Yeah, I haven't voted in a long time.
Jesse Jackson continued his effort to expand his base of support beyond black voters. In Greenwich Village, he met with a gay rights group.
We cannot, with any measure of sound theology, for one moment reject someone because of their sex orientation.
Then it was on to Chinatown.
I'm the first person seeking the presidency to ever come to Chinatown. It's good to be home with you today.
But Jackson did not seem to be at home when he began to use chopsticks in a Chinese restaurant. He finally got the hang of it. Jackson is still campaigning for black votes, too. In East Harlem, he visited a burned-out housing project and criticized Hart and Mondale for supporting increases in the defense budget.
We as a nation must stop building missiles and start building houses.
This afternoon, thousands of people turned out for a Jackson parade through Harlem. The purpose was to urge a big voter turnout for the primary. Jackson said he is confident the people who marched together here today will vote together on Tuesday for him. If his strong support from the black community in past primaries is any guide, he is not being overconfident. Kenley Jones, NBC News, with the Jackson campaign in Harlem.
Coming up, Irving R. Levine on how a last-minute bailout of Argentina will help U.S. banks. Noah Nelson in Hawaii, where Kilauea fizzles, but the Mauna Loa volcano is still drawing crowds. And Phil Bremen in West Germany, where thousands protest a Nazi SS reunion.
A poorly designed computer can be a painful experience. Burroughs is changing this by studying the effects computers have on the people who use them.
Morning, Claire.
We developed a high-resolution screen that's easy on the eyes, an adjustable keyboard that's easy on the back, even modified the sound of the key click. What's important to Burroughs isn't just how well computers work, but how well people work with computers.
Night, Claire.
Many Visa card holders will soon receive their new Visa cards.
That's yours too?
Yeah.
For some, it will be the new classic Visa card.
I haven't seen you around lately.
Oh, I travel a lot on business.
Until your new classic card arrives, your current Visa card is as good as ever.
You want to break this in?
You're on.
It's the classic.
Your new Visa card.
Visa.
You know about Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong, will. But you can worry a lot less about Murphy's Law when you own a Lawn Boy. There's no oil to change, no valves to go bad. There's less to go wrong.
Ready to cook?
And for years of mowing, the engine is designed to last 50% longer than most. So get yourself a Lawn Boy and help make sure whatever can go wrong won't.
Argentina owes a lot of money, $43 billion. By midnight tonight, it must pay $500 million, money it doesn't have, to 25 American banks for overdue interest. The banks will get their money. The U.S. Treasury and 4 Latin countries today agreed to loan Argentina enough to pay that overdue interest. Some members of Congress are upset, saying taxpayers should not be forced to bail out the banks. But Irving R. Levine reports that the administration does not share that view.
Treasury Secretary Donald Regan insisted that the U.S. government contribution of $300 million so Argentina can make its interest payments is not a bailout of U.S. banks.
Our problem was trying to help the Argentina, not the banks. We're not rushing up there throwing money at a problem. We recognize that taxpayers have a right to expect us to be very careful with their money, and we are being.
To enable Argentina to pay U.S. banks $500 million interest due by midnight tonight, Latin American countries, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil, are temporarily loaning Argentina money, and the U.S. will reimburse them. From members of Congress, immediate objections.
Well, I think the taxpayers are being asked to bail out the banks. The banks have made large profits in the past. They've kept those profits. Now they have a loss. They don't want to have to take the loss, so they're asking the taxpayers to make up the difference, and the Reagan administration is apparently willing to do that.
Secretary Reagan acknowledged that the rescue plan pleases U.S. bankers.
I think that the banks are, surprised, almost shocked that this thing was able to be hammered out.
In Argentina, only 6 months ago, a democratic election replaced a military dictatorship, and the Reagan administration hopes the new loans will strengthen the new Argentine president. But the Reagan White House may have set a dangerous precedent. Other debtor countries may now conclude that if they say they can't pay their debts, the U.S. will find a way to rescue them, even if it puts taxpayer money at risk. Irving R. Levine, NBC News at the White House.
The military chief of Honduras, General Gustavo Alvarez Martinez, was fired today. His dismissal took U.S. officials by surprise. Alvarez was considered an important supporter of American administration policy in Central America. Fred Francis is at the State Department with details.
The ouster of General Alvarez was a surprise to the Reagan administration, which has invested heavily in the stability of Honduras. And though the civilian government is still in control there, the departure of General Alvarez raises questions about the future of Honduras's lockstep loyalty to American policy.
General Alvarez was the administration's man in Honduras. He supported Pentagon policy, he gave the CIA a free hand there, and the White House smiled on his anti-communist rhetoric. During his 2 years as Honduran Chief of Staff, the United States built a half a dozen airfields, 2 radar sites, and a training base. The number of American soldiers went from 45 to 2,000. His exile to Costa Rica this morning comes on the eve of yet more war games with the United States and Honduran troops, and at a time when CIA-supported rebels operating from Honduras are having success against Nicaragua. So far, no one has given a reason why Alvarez fell out of favor with other officers, but today's development has further troubled the administration's critics.
Now, the question comes, if the government is unstable, if you don't know who you're dealing with from one day to the next, how do you protect American military installations in these countries?
United States support from Honduras is critical to the Salvadoran army. The military in El Salvador is getting vital reconnaissance information from American pilots operating out of Honduras. The daily flights of small planes help the Salvadorans direct artillery fire, track guerrilla movements, intercept radio communications, and map guerrilla bases.
A senior State Department official said today there is nothing illegal in the United States providing aerial intelligence to Salvadoran troops on the ground. He said those flights from Honduras are helping to turn the war around there, and they will continue as long as they are effective. Fred Francis, NBC News, the State Department.
The European community, the common market, today for the first time in its 20-year history, cut farm prices and limited the production of milk. The 10-nation organization has been close to insolvency because propping up Europe's farmers eats up 2/3 of its funds.
Coming up, Susan Starnes in Huntsville, Texas, on reaction to the execution of the Candyman murderer.
Unfortunately, I can't speak for everyone down.
The return of American business. It's coming back smarter and more competitive than ever. In this tough new world, AT&T Communications can help your business in ways you never thought of. With smarter techniques in marketing so you can sell better.
Fine, and roll it out on the coast.
Smarter ways to streamline your distribution.
We can ship it to you without a layover.
Even smarter ways to turn information into new opportunities.
Your region looks promising. Let's go with it.
All by tailoring the unique capabilities of the most powerful communications network in the world to work for you. To help your entire business work better in ways you never thought of. Think of us in ways you never thought of. AT&T Communications.
You know, at Midas, we've installed over 48 million mufflers, more than any other muffler chain. In fact, compare us to any of them, and you know what you'll find?
We've had more repeat customers than they've had customers.
We've done more foreign cars than they've done cars.
And with our Midas guarantee, we've installed more free mufflers than they've sold. When it comes to experience, No one can touch Midas.
Trust the Midas touch.
Ronald O'Brien, the man fellow inmates called the Candy Man, was killed by lethal injection this morning at a Huntsville, Texas prison. O'Brien, 39, was convicted of killing his 8-year-old son with Halloween candy laced with cyanide. He had taken out a $31,000 life insurance on the boy. Susan Starnes of KPRC-TV in Houston reports.
Demonstrators were outside the prison waiting for the announcement they wanted to hear, that Ronald O'Brien was dead. 9 years ago on Halloween, O'Brien gave his son poison candy. Timmy died that night with enough cyanide in his body to kill an elephant. Police first thought Timmy had been killed by a psychopath until his father tried to collect the boy's life insurance. Outside the prison last night, parents of other murdered children joined the vigil.
You know, how could anyone do something to their own child? But all of us would give to have the chance to have ours back.
Ronald O'Brien went to his deathbed never admitting that he killed his own son. But in a final statement, the condemned man did ask to be forgiven.
To anyone I have offended in any way during my 39 years, I pray and ask your forgiveness, just as I forgive anyone who offended me in any way.
Ronald O'Brien is dead. His ex-wife sees the execution as the end of a nightmare and a chance for a brand new beginning. Susan Starnes for NBC News, Huntsville, Texas.
There was sunshine over the Carolinas today, welcomed by the victims of Wednesday's tornadoes. In Winnsboro, South Carolina, donated clothing and food was distributed to people who had lost theirs. And Red Cross workers continued finding shelter for people who no longer have homes. Volunteers arrived to help repair damaged houses, and survivors turned to replanting the shrubbery the winds blew away. 6 counties in North Carolina and 4 in South Carolina have been declared disaster areas. 59 people died in the tornadoes, more than 1,000 hurt. The rumbles of the mighty volcano at Kilauea are now spurts and fizzles, but the Mauna Loa volcano lives on, although it too is losing steam. Noah Nelson reports from Hawaii.
Kilauea is now a smoldering giant. Its fury lasted only one day, but the eruption sent a massive lava flow toward homes that are still in jeopardy from burning vegetation. Last night, the volcano's fire could be seen on the horizon. Some families in the lava's path were evacuated, but others stayed to watch the spectacular show.
Is the shooting now?
There now. It's going up. There it's going.
By morning, the real danger was gone. But 25 miles away, Mauna Loa volcano, which erupted last Sunday, is still active and sending lava down its northeast side. The volcanoes have generated lots of interest among tourists
I got your name down. I haven't taken any money from you, so.
who are booking charter flights to get a closer look.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime shot.
Curiosity at seeing something that's kind of unusual and haven't seen before.
Geologists say pressure inside Mauna Loa may be decreasing, and each day the slowing lava flow poses less of a threat to populated areas. Noah Nelson, NBC News, Hilo, Hawaii.
According to his wife, Christina, John DeLorean became a born-again Christian while he was in jail on cocaine charges. Christina DeLorean told Contemporary Christian magazine that she brought her husband a Bible just after his arrest. She said he called her the next morning and told her that he had asked Jesus to come into his life. Referring to the case against her husband, Mrs. DeLorean says it is in God's hands. He's going to do what's best for us. As for the trial, the process of choosing a jury is still underway.
Coming up, Beirut is without foreign armies for the first time in 8 years as the last French troops pull out.
If you're looking for an investment firm, I've got some advice for you. I want to tell you the single best way to choose that investment firm. Just ask a lot of investors a lot of questions. Ask if their broker really listens, really cares, and ask them how they're doing. I'm telling you this because I believe you're going to hear a lot of good things about one company, Dean Witter. I think you'll find Dean Witter worth asking about.
Dean Witter, worth asking about.
When people pump their own gas, they sometimes forget to check things. So when they come in for service...
Mr. Goodwrench, there's something wrong.
Well, let's take a look.
Mr. Goodwrench knows your GM car. He has the right tools and the right GM training available to spot your problems fast.
Mr. Goodwrench?
Nothing serious. Just needs a tune-up. By the way, your oil is low. Here's how to check.
Keep that great GM feeling
With Mr. Goodwrench.
with genuine GM parts.
Hey, everybody, it's Uncle Joe.
We all like to spend the weekends with family and friends. That's why AT&T saves you 60% on long distance every weekend, and they don't stop with savings. They give you service, too. Calling from anywhere to anywhere. Operator service, calls that sound as close as you feel, and 60% off.
Joe, knew you'd make it somehow.
Savings and service. That's AT&T. The more you hear, the better we sound.
Reach out and touch someone.
French soldiers have left Beirut, and for the first time in 8 years, Beirut is without the occupation of foreign armies. At a ceremony on the dockside, French ministers reviewed some of the 400 departing troops, what was left of the 6,000 from France, the U.S., Italy, and Britain. The U.S. formally ended its participation yesterday, freeing the 6 fleet ships for duty elsewhere in the Mediterranean. Steelworkers battled police in riots throughout France. Protests like this one in Metz today were over a government announcement that the industry's workforce will be cut by about 25%. About 25,000 people would lose their jobs by 1987. The firings would be part of an attempt to modernize the French steel industry, which lost more than $1 billion last year. 5,000 people marched through a town in West Germany today protesting a weekend reunion of the Nazi SS division. While most of the protesters were from out of town, Phil Bremen reports that some of the locals welcomed the former SS men.
Nazi concentration camps led the protest in Oberaula, West Germany. They were marching here because the keepers of the concentration camps were meeting here. Veterans of the SS, Hitler's paramilitary police, holding their annual reunion in the town auditorium. Many townsfolk saw nothing wrong with that. Some even taunted the protesters, calling them troublemakers. Police were out in force to keep the 6,000 demonstrators away from the 600 at the reunion. The SS and other Nazi groups are illegal, but veterans organizations are not.
And I think it's a shame for us. It's a shame for for our land.
The mayor agrees with all these out-of-town demonstrators that the reunion is a disgrace, but most of the local population seems happy to have the old SS men spend their money here. The SS men insist they did not and do not have anything to do with politics, just soldiering. They let no outsiders into their meeting, but did hold a news conference.
We regret the concentration camps. We regret.
But at a meeting last year, according to a tape of it the mayor has, one SS speaker said they regret nothing and would do it all over again.
In the 1,000 years this town has been in existence, this supposedly is the first demonstration it's ever seen.
Unless you count the Nazi rampage that destroyed the local synagogue in 1938. Demonstrators today placed a wreath and a marker. The town had chosen to forget that part of its history. Phil Bremen, NBC News, Oberaula, West Germany.
Coming up, Don Oliver in New York on campaign rhetoric, putting a new face on some familiar ideas.
Do I care about the foods he eats? Do I care if he gets too much sugar? Sure I do.
Each night before I go to bed, my baby.
In the morning, he gets Nutri-Grain cereal.
Show you that I care for you, my baby.
Nutri-Grain from Kellogg's. No sugar added, no preservatives. Nothing comes between you and its whole grain good taste.
This is dedicated to the one I love.
Nutri-Grain. Why not dedicate it to the one you love?
No, I'm single, really.
Really?
Really.
Hey, Jack, who's your friend, eh? Who's the old choppers, eh?
I've got to do something about those loose spots.
Fix-It helps fix loose spots. Fix-It spreads evenly, filling tiny gaps between dentures and gum with ingredients that give added dimension to holding.
Here comes your friend.
No problem now. And neither are my loose spots.
Hi, Jack. How's the wife, huh? Just kidding. Just kidding.
Today's Fix-It helps fix loose spots.
Finally, a luxury car with elegant appointments.
classic styling, and perhaps the greatest luxury of all, a sensible price. The beautifully affordable GL10s from Subaru, inexpensive and built to stay that way.
Crisis in our hospitals. An estimated 1 out of 10 nurses suffers from alcoholism or drug abuse. Why are these people allowed to care for our sick? First Camera investigates Sunday.
In a presidential campaign in which the most memorable slogan has something to do with missing beef, the Democrats are having a hard time convincing voters they're offering substance this year, not just rhetoric. As Don Oliver reports, there's plenty of old, but where's the new?
Attack! Animals, real and imagined, have been very useful in the rhetoric of this campaign.
Rats survived. Snakes survived.
Following Senator Hart's position on arms control is like following a blackbird on a dark night.
To put the nuclear demon back in its cave and seal it up forever.
The most overworked word of this political season, new.
We need new direction, new challenges and new choices.
We need a realistic new policy of de-escalation and negotiation.
We can only solve a new generation of challenges by putting forward a new vision for this country's future and a new direction and a new agenda for this country.
Are campaign claims ever exaggerated? Hardly ever.
All my life, I've worked with the urban leaders, county executives, mayors. All of my life, I have fought for people. All my life, I've fought for strong environmental laws.
My whole public career, I have fought for social justice.
All of my life, I've wanted to use the powers of American government to make America grow.
The candidates have embraced and held more than a few mixed metaphors.
You cannot have a missile in one hand and a dove in another. You cannot embrace doves and missiles at the same time. You cannot have a missile in one hand and an urban policy in the other hand, because
In the What Did He Say department,
I would like to define my definition of that difficult to define concept by being as specific as possible.
there's now said to be a disease named for that college forum, St. Anselm syndrome, the inability to stay awake. However, Mondale does not have a corner on obfuscation.
There would be created a national commission to prioritize infrastructure needs. This is
And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
You could put the lavalier mic on around your neck.
And I have a complex about ropes around my neck.
And who says Gary Hart does not have a self-defacing sense of humor? Don Oliver, NBC News, New York.
That's our news. John Palmer will be here tomorrow night. I'll see you again Monday morning on NBC News at sunrise. I'm Connie Chung, NBC News, New York. Thank you for joining us, and good night for all of us at NBC News.